So Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem, this is a relatively monumental release, mainly because of the fact that it's on the Super Nintendo. And the Super Nintendo, obviously holds a lot more memory than the original NES, and the original NES in particular, writing text on screen actually ate up a lot of memory. So basically, the Super Nintendo allows for, much more, dialogue and story and all that other stuff, along with, of course, the better graphics and musical capabilities as well. But either way, though, obviously feels like, Fire Emblem Gaiden should have been on the Super Nintendo, coming out in 1992, but either way, we're here with Mystery of the Emblem, and they decided to also include a sort of remake of the original Fire Emblem, titled Book 1 in this game, along with a new story following up the original game, which is Fire Emblem Mystery of the Emblem Book 2. And obviously, the stories, they're not super fleshed out yet, but obviously this game attempted to be, a lot more cohesive in, the world building, the lore, etc. And it does pay off somewhat, definitely, though in terms of gameplay, well, it still needs a little bit more refinements to actually, sort of feel good to play. But either way, this game is a definite step in the right direction. But what exactly does it have to offer in terms of, story and whatnot? Well, I'm not going to do a story recap like the last two videos. I'm kind of just going to get straight into discussing the story. So, obviously, in this game, well, it's a little bit of a different tale, a different side of the coin than what we see in the first game with Marth. Of course, in that game, Marth's motivations for taking out Dolor were fairly straightforward. Dolor, wanted to exterminate all humans, make them suffer. Obviously, Dolor did make human slaves for a time there, but ultimately, though, the general end goal was, the general motivation for, wanting to take down Dolor as well as the rest of the Alliance, particularly Gra, who obviously betrayed Marth's dad, killed him, as well as his mother as well, and just generally gave his country a hard time. And obviously also the allied nations of Macedon and Grust as well, who obviously for no reason seemed to want to back Dolor, even though Dolor was clearly very hostile towards humans. Obviously, Michalis in particular wanted to team up with Grust and take out Dolor for himself once Arcania, Aurelis, and Altea fell, but either way, though, that didn't end up working out for him, and ultimately there was a bunch of unnecessary chaos caused by some of those decisions. But ultimately, either way, though, it was fairly simple for Marth to do what he did, and even if there were sacrifices along the way, he could ultimately feel good that the absolute menace of Medius was dealt with and put to bed for good. But as things tend to be, obviously there was a reason that Medius and Dolor wanted to take out all humans, and it's because humans aren't always exactly known for being the kindest creatures in a lot of different capacities, but either way. Now, however Marth expected, sort of the aftershock of the war to pan out, I don't think he was exactly prepared for what was about to unfold. So basically, of course, Marth, he receives an imperial order from the Arcanian palace telling him to put down a rebellion in Grust, and Marth, he obviously thinks fairly highly of Hardin, of course, the new emperor of Arcania, and decides to go over, and things are pretty bad. Obviously, it's pretty chaotic. People are presumably dying, and there's a little bit of supposed famine, but obviously the biggest thing that you may learn from one of the villagers is that basically almost all the young girls in Grust have been taken by the occupational force led by General Lang, and that presumably Lang and some of his army members are doing whatever they please with said young girls, and that's It's definitely a little bit of a tone shift, I'd say, from what we generally what we were fed in the first game. But either way, though, yeah, it's a little bit harder to stomach for Marth to see all this stuff going on, and of course, there's the thing with the royal children of Rust and Lorenz committing suicide. So yeah, that's a lot to digest just in the first chapter of the game. But the Marth obviously recognizes that things are wrong, but ultimately he is advised against doing anything against General Lang because, well, Arcania's army is much stronger than Altea, and Marth and friends would certainly be branded traitors. And even though, you know, it would probably be in the best interest to get something done sooner rather than later, ultimately Jagan advises that they deal with the rebellions in Macedon like they were asked to. So Marth and friends obviously go over to Macedon, who are also somewhat reeling from, losing Michalis in the previous war, and they're having a bunch of little rebellions, which get a lot of people caught up and causes a lot of unnecessary death, generally speaking. But either way, though, as unfortunate as this all is, of course, the big thing is Minerva, obviously Marth's close friend from Macedon. She's been badly injured and is apparently being captured by some rebel army forces. But luckily Michalis is there, and he's there to save her. Either way, though, it's clear that there's a lot of turmoil going on, and Marth doesn't exactly know what to do about it. And obviously Marth helped create some of this turmoil in the previous war, but he just feels kind of dumbfounded. Marth really didn't have, I guess, a proper plan to help the other countries after the war. But either way, though, we can see how that could create a bigger issue with what comes next. The fact that, of course, Arcania has invaded Altea, and now everything has been thrown into complete chaos once again. What about the Divine Dragons, though? That's a thing in this game, of course. Obviously, Godo is a Divine Dragon, as he reveals, as well as Zane, and they both ultimately follow Naga, the leader of the Divine Dragons and stuff. And obviously, in this game, we learned that the Divine Dragons basically told all the other dragons of this continent to turn into humans, otherwise they would eventually go insane. And some of the dragons, many of them did not choose to turn into humans. Those who did obviously became Manichetes and used dragon stones to maybe try to turn back sometimes. But either way, it's pretty interesting how, at least in this world, dragons are eventually doomed to lose their minds and go feral after a certain amount of time. That's certainly something, of course. Of course, any being that would live in a world that's similar to Earth, that definitely would cause any being to go absolutely insane after a while. But ultimately, though, the fact that they have to change to human or a humanoid form in order to avoid going insane is a little bit weird, and that's kind of odd. But either way, though, regardless of that, it is a part of why these wars have been happening, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. Obviously, some dragons were too prideful to let go of their dragon form, and they suffered for it. And obviously, they're being controlled by humans as feral, pets, so to speak. But either way, though, it's not hard to see why even the dragons that turned into Manichetes, they still ended up being hunted out and persecuted by humans. Even though they were pretty peaceful, it just made the dragons even more insane and mad, and it appears to be a vicious cycle of madness no matter which way it comes, that so long as dragons and humans both exist in the same world, then there's gonna eventually be some bloodshed and a whole lot of massacring. But either way, though, with that out of the way, there's not much to divulge in the rest of the story, I guess. But ultimately, the biggest takeaway is that, it's not just winning the war, it's obviously how you handle it afterwards as well, preparing, the end of the war and how everything pans out and stuff. And Marth clearly wasn't up to that relative task, working with Hardin and, properly, getting all the other nations back in a good state. And, either way, he obviously also could have made some other decisions in the previous war, like not choosing to, take out Gra before liberating his homeland of Altea first. But either way, he also maybe could have found a way to have spared Camus, and that certainly would have made things a lot better, the situation in that country, potentially if he would have just, killed Medius first instead of did all that shabazz. But ultimately, though, it is unfortunate what happened for Marth and the continent of Arcadia, but either way, though, that pretty much concludes the story and mystery of the Emblem for now. But regardless, though, it's not much else to say, because, well, we're finally getting on to the good stuff, I guess you can say, with the next game. But as for the other things, well, the music in this game, it's pretty nice. It's definitely considerably more expressive than what we got before. Obviously, there's a lot more different things going on, a lot of different sounds and stuff. You got Liberation, you got Holy War, of course, and these songs definitely carry some weight, but also, this Divine Dragon song, Divine Dragon B, or whatever. This one's, quite like this one quite a bit. But I'd say easily the two that stand out the most are the ending theme here, the Soldier's Requiem. This is, I guess, the start of Fire Emblem's fairly iconic credits themes, but this one hits very, very hard, even if I'm not like the Maximus fan of this game in particular. And though of course the theme of love is the most special, I guess, and it's doesn't really need much words, but either way, these two songs, definitely you truly start to see some real emotion out of them, and they I guess set the precedent for the stuff that is to come, rather. And it's very clear that around the end of this game's development there was a clear shift, and regardless of what you interpret that shift to be, it's very clear that the Fire Emblem series was going to change very drastically very soon. But either way, on to the next game.